In a small town, there was a girl who was very excited because her friend was going on a date. Her friend had been talking to a man online and they planned to meet. But on the night of the date, something sad happened. The man did not show up, and her friend was left waiting and feeling very disappointed. The next day, the man sent a message to her friend, but it wasn't nice at all. It hurt her feelings because she had been looking forward to their date. But her friend was strong. She decided not to answer his mean message and stopped being friends with him. A little while later, the girl's roommate saw the man on a dating app. He had changed his profile to say he wanted someone who would not make him stressed. This made the girl and her friend laugh. They even thought about playing a trick on him to teach him a lesson, but they were not sure if that was the right thing to do. In another story, we have a girl and her fiancé who went to Disney World. They were very excited about their day at the park. When they arrived at the parking lot, something happened that would test their patience and character. As the boy's fiancé tried to park her car, a man in a nearby truck was watching and laughing. He was making fun of her attempts to park in a tight space. This man was not being nice at all. He was being disrespectful and unkind. The girl and her fiancé felt upset, but decided to ignore him and focus on enjoying their day at Disney. After they parked the car, the girl's fiancé got out, and that's when the man in the truck did something even worse. He carelessly opened his door and hit the fiancé's car, leaving a mark. The man didn't even apologize. He just shrugged and laughed as he walked away with his girlfriend. This was very rude, and the girl's fiancé knew he had to do something. He felt it was important to stand up for his fiancé and show that they wouldn't accept being treated badly, but he also knew he had to stay calm and not lose his temper. So instead of yelling or fighting, he calmly confronted the man. He wanted to make it clear that they wouldn't be pushed around, but he did it in a way that kept the situation from getting worse. As they walked into the park, the girl's fiancé was feeling a mix of emotions. He was upset about the rude man, but he was also proud of himself for handling the situation well. Then, something wonderful happened. His fiancé grabbed his hand, nuzzled her head into his shoulder, and told him she loved him. This was the first time she had said it, and it made the fiancé feel like a good man. He was proud that he had protected her and their car without getting angry or causing a fight. Now let's talk about what the girl's fiancé did next. Some people might wonder if he should have done more to get back at the rude man. But the person whose car was hit decided to stand up for himself. They told the rude man that he was being mean. The rude man was surprised because he was not used to people standing up to him. The person felt good for standing up for themselves. This story teaches us about being strong and kind. It's important to stand up for ourselves and not let people be mean to us. But it's also important to be nice to others, even when they are not nice to us. This is a question that can make people think about what is the right thing to do when someone is mean to them. In another of our story, we meet a brother who loves snacks. About 10 years ago, he remembered sharing snacks with his brothers during movie night. He didn't like sharing from one bowl because his brothers would eat all the good bits and leave only plain breadsticks. So he learned to get his own bowl if he wanted the tasty snacks. Eventually, everyone in the family just picked their own snack. The brother is a big guy, and he likes his food. He's not alone in this. His family is full of people who enjoy eating. When he was visiting his family as an adult, he noticed that things had changed a bit. His younger brother brought home a big bag of corn chips and some salsa and cheese, but he took it all to his room and didn't want to share. The brother respected this, even though he wanted some of the tasty snacks. So, he decided to do something kind, but a little bit sneaky. He bought each of his brothers a big bag of dried apricots. He didn't tell them why, he just gave them the snacks. Then he went to spend the weekend with a friend. Later, he found out that his brothers had eaten all the apricots and had spent the weekend feeling sick. The brother laughed when he heard this. He hadn't meant to make them sick, he just wanted to give them a surprise snack. The brother's dad found out about the apricots and laughed too. He used to play pranks when he was younger, so he thought it was funny. But he also gave the brother a look that said not to try anything like that with him. The brother's mom didn't know about the prank, but he wondered if his younger brother would ever find out. In another story, a mother gets a little bit of revenge on her husband. Over 50 years ago, the dad was a bit vain and very stubborn. One day, the mom bought a sweater for the dad. But when he saw it was a size large, he refused to try it on. He insisted he always wore a medium. The mom didn't argue. She just took the sweater back to the store. But instead of exchanging it for a medium, she bought two identical sweaters, one in medium and one in small. Then she switched the labels. When the dad tried on the small sweater with the medium label, he struggled to get it on but insisted it fit better. The mom watched, trying not to laugh, as the dad praised the sweater that was obviously too small. These stories teach us about handling difficult situations with calmness and humor. Whether it's dealing with a rude person, sharing with siblings, or having a bit of fun with family, it's important to remember to be kind and think about how our actions affect others. The dad in our story, after being unknowingly tricked into wearing a sweater that was too small for him, wore it around for a while that day. However, it's unclear if he ever wore it again. One thing for sure, he was not about to admit that the sweater might be a bit too snug for him. His wife, the mom, was usually not one for spending extravagantly, but having this funny story to share with a few close friends was definitely worth the price of two clearance sale sweaters. Sadly, the mom passed away 5 years ago, but the dad is still around, sharp as ever at the age of 99. The person narrating this story wonders if it's time to let the dad know about the sweater trick, or if he might get all pompous about being confronted with the truth. They decide there's no rush to tell him and think about waiting a few more years. The dad is a stubborn guy, refusing to admit he was wrong, even to the point of wearing a too small sweater rather than admitting his mistake. In another story, a young man working at a children's after-school project had to restrain a problematic child who was lashing out physically. He did this safely and as he was trained. However, when he informed the child's stepdad, things took a turn for the worse. The child's mom, who had just become a social worker, started a campaign against the young man. She tried to get him arrested and charged with assault, which went nowhere because there was no case. But within the council, a witch hunt started, with lies being spread and a sham investigation being carried out. This led to the young man being let go from all his jobs. But he had been gathering evidence. With help from friends within the council, he collected emails and information. He had nearly 8 years of service with them and qualified for legal help. He sued them for wrongful dismissal and received a significant payout, though he had to sign an NDA and couldn't talk about it for 10 years. 4 years ago, the young man ran into the child, now an adult, in a supermarket. The former child was about to say something mean, but the young man leaned in and thanked him and his mom. He explained that because of their actions, he was able to put a large down payment on a house. The look on the young man's face was priceless as he turned purple with shock and anger. He eventually stormed off, and the young man felt a sense of satisfaction. In another story, a waitress at a family-owned diner experienced a challenging Mother's Day. She was the only waitress, and the diner was packed. Her boss was nowhere to be found, and she had to manage everything alone. When her shift was about to end, her boss asked her to stay for 2 more hours because she had forgotten about a doctor's appointment. The waitress, who had often been made to stay late without extra pay, refused and walked out. The next day, her boss was furious and questioned her professionalism. The waitress reminded her boss that she had obligations outside of work and couldn't stay longer because of her boss's poor time management. Surprisingly, she wasn't fired, but the incident highlighted the challenges and the importance of standing up for oneself in the workplace. One day, the diner was extremely busy, and she was the only worker there. Customers were getting angry because their food was taking too long, and the cook even had to close the diner for a bit. Despite all the chaos, the girl was the one who kept the diner running. She was very important to the place, so her boss couldn't afford to lose her. A few months later, the girl decided it was time for a change. She gave her boss 2 weeks' notice that she was leaving. Her boss really didn't want her to go and asked her to at least work on the weekends. But the girl had a new job that also needed her on weekends, so she couldn't stay. She even left the diner a week early and didn't look back. She blocked her boss on everything and moved on to a job where she earned twice as much for easier work. It's funny to think that the owner of the diner, who didn't show up when needed, called the girl unprofessional. It seems like the diner wasn't paying its workers enough because the girl found a much better job very easily. In another story, we meet Karen on a plane. She was sitting at the very back of the airplane, but as soon as it landed, she got up and ran to the front. She wanted to be the first one off the plane. She didn't look at anyone and acted like she was special. The seat belt sign was still on, and the flight crew asked her to sit down, but she didn't listen. Everyone on the plane was tired from the long flight and just watched Karen. Then, the captain made an announcement. He said there was a special guest on board and he would come out to greet her after they reached the gate. Karen stood awkwardly at the front, waiting. When the plane stopped, the captain asked her to move back, little by little, until they reached the rear of the plane. Then he announced that the special guest was sitting in seat 42C and asked everyone to give her a round of applause. The whole plane laughed and clapped. Karen was embarrassed because she had been made to walk all the way back to her seat. In the next story, a person who works in a hotel got into trouble with their boss. Their colleague, Jim Bob, had complained about them using an iPad at work. So they decided to have a little fun. When they found Jim Bob's Facebook still logged in, they liked a bunch of random pages on his account. Now, Jim Bob's Facebook feed was full of all sorts of weird and colorful things. It was a sneaky way to get back at him for complaining. Another story is about a car detailing shop with a new manager who made a silly rule. She said no drinks should be on raised surfaces, like desks. But the person telling the story noticed that the management desk had drinks on it. So they moved all the drinks to the floor, following the new rule. The manager got tired of picking her drink up from the floor, and soon the rule was gone. It's funny how sometimes rules don't make much sense, and a little bit of clever action can show that. In our next story, a person named Linda worked in the back office of a bar. One day, their high school friend, also named Linda, asked them to work there because they needed someone quickly. They got the job right away, and everyone was nice, except for one person. The person telling the story had also applied for a scholarship to grad school and got it. They were taking evening classes so they could keep working. One day, while working on an essay during their lunch break, one of the owners, Greg, came in and asked what they were doing. They said they were doing homework. Greg didn't know they were in grad school and laughed, thinking they were still in college. He called them stupid for not finishing college yet. This story shows how people can be quick to judge without knowing the whole story. It's important to remember that everyone has his own path and timing for achieving their goals. Being kind and understanding is always better than making fun of someone. In another story, there's a young woman who works in the back office of a bar. She's smart and hardworking, and she's even attending grade school. One day, one of the owners of the bar, Greg, comes into the office and sees her doing homework. He doesn't know she's in grad school and thinks she's still in college. He laughs and calls her stupid for not having finished college yet. The woman is surprised and a bit hurt by Greg's words. She knows she's smart. After all, she has already graduated with a bachelor's degree, but Greg doesn't know this, and she decides not to tell him. Over the next week, Greg keeps calling her stupid, thinking she hasn't graduated from college. This makes the woman feel upset, but she tries to ignore him. Then, during a weekly meeting, Greg interrupts her and tells everyone she's stupid because she's still in college. But Sam, another owner and her direct boss, knows the truth. He's confused because he knows she's in grad school. When Greg insists that the woman is stupid and should be fired, Linda, another coworker, steps in. She reveals that the woman has already graduated from college. Greg is shocked. He thought she was still in college because she was doing homework. The woman explains that she's in grad school, not college. Greg is made to apologize to her, and from then on, he becomes the laughingstock of the office. In another story, we meet a college student working on a group project. The project is about building a business on paper. The student is teamed up with a guy named Mark and 3 other people. At first, everything goes well, but soon, the other group members stop doing their work. The student has to do everything alone and gets frustrated. One day, the teacher tells the student that they've already passed the subject based on their individual work and what they've done for the project. The student decides not to do anything more for the group project. When the deadline comes, the group panics because nothing has been done. The student stays quiet and lets the deadline pass. In the end, only the student and Mark pass the subject. The others fail because they didn't do their part. Our final story is about a young woman working at an amusement park. She used to be friends with a coworker, but when the coworker found out she was a Christian conservative, she started calling her names and even sent her death threats. The young woman reported this to HR, but nothing was done. After the young woman was fired for being a whistleblower on a separate issue, the coworker posted a video of herself drinking whiskey. The young woman called the park police and reported her. The coworker was arrested, fired, and kicked out of the dorms. These stories show us that it's important to be kind and respectful to others, no matter what their beliefs or background are. Everyone has their own journey and challenges, and it's better to support each other than to be mean or judgmental.